In this video, we're going to take a look at creating our very own grid layout, which is a very popular layout with the responsive and mobile web. So I'm including the normalized CSS reset file, which you can find by Googling normalized CSS, and then this grid.css file, which at the moment is very bare. So we've got these rows, and then inside these rows we've got columns. And these columns have a class of the width of the column. So our grid layout is going to be based on a 12 column layout. So each one of these rows consists of enough columns to equal 12. So if we look down the bottom, we've got 12 ones, 6 twos, 4 threes, a 7 and a 5, a 7, 3, 2, 8, a 4, 3 and 9, a 10 and 2, and a 1 and 11. They all equal to 12 inside our rows. So let's get started with some CSS. Let's start off with the box sizing property of everything using the universal selector, the asterisk, and we're going to set this to border box. Essentially what this will do is every element, once we have specified the box sizing to border box, every element's width will also include the border and the padding of that element, so we don't end up with any unexpected happenings with our grid layout. Now I'm going to set the body to a width of 100%, then a minimum width. This is something that most people miss out a lot, I see. Set this to 320 pixels. It's important to set the minimum width of your web page when you're working with a mobile or responsive web, as your page will eventually have a breakpoint. And a breakpoint is essentially when we bring in a media query, or when we should use a media query, when the site starts to break up. So by setting a minimum width, we don't have to design for anything under 320 pixels. That's just as small as the web page will go. Set a maximum width, so we don't end up with 100% of the browser's width. That may look a little bit strange in some circumstances, having a full or complete width. Then we'll have our row class. It's going to have a padding of 20 pixels. It's going to have a width also of 100%, and it's going to float to the left. So that's our row. Now our col, or our column, it's going to have a background color. I'm going to set this to E7 4C 3C. Now we're going to have a minimum height just for aesthetic purposes, and we're going to set that to 60 pixels. Now we're going to have a margin left of 2.4%. Now these are the gutters that we'll be using. You may hear the word gutters when you work with your own grid layout or someone else's, like a framework or something like that. So the gutters are essentially the area between the different columns. So we're going to have 2.4% as our gutter width. Now we're going to display the columns as inline block, and we're also going to float these to the left. Now where it starts to get a little bit tricky, we're going to have the first child and the last child columns. We're going to set them to have a margin left and a margin right of 0 pixels respectively. So these are pseudo classes. We have a comma, then we write first child, and opening and closing curly braces. And I'm going to set the first child to have a margin left of 0 pixels. And then we're going to select our last child. It's important to remember these are the first and last child of the parent element. So the first column and the last column within a row. That's essentially how they'll be working, or that's essentially what they mean. Set that to have 0 pixels. Now, forgive me, but I'm going to go ahead and copy in our widths, because these may take a little bit of calculation, a bit of mathematics. So I'm just going to paste them in here. They may look a little bit bizarre, but including our gutters, these are actually correct widths. They will equal 100% when the column number adds up to 12. Now for our grid layout, we're going to have one simple media query. So at media, maximum width of 768 pixels. We're going to set the column to have a width 100%, and we're going to set the important flag so our media query will not be overridden, and a margin. We're just going to set some margins for some aesthetic purposes: 0 pixels, 5 pixels, and 0 pixels. So 5 pixels on the top, 0 on the right, 5 on the bottom, 0 on the left. So that's essentially our grid layout. So let's go ahead and save this. Make sure we've saved our index file. And now we're going to go ahead and load it up in the browser. So as you can see, we have our very own grid-based layout. So it looks very neat, and it can be used for all kinds of purposes. It's very versatile. And we'll see our media query kick in, and then we have a kind of vertically stacked layout. So that's essentially how you create your own grid-based layout. I hope you enjoyed this and find it very helpful.